Who should get the best? Who deserves the best? That's a question I think about a lot. Like, who should get the best education? For years, I worked in an alternative school teaching math. The kids that went to school there weren't successful in their big high school, so they were sent to our small one. The longer I worked there, the more obvious it became that these were the kids that needed the best education. It needed to be dynamic. They were children whose parents died from drug overdoses. They were kids that didn't have a stable place to live. They were kids that struggled to identify adults in their lives whose paths were ones they wanted to follow. They needed the best, but were relegated to receiving something far worse. I think about the kids from We Got This. Many of them attend school at places most of us reading this would never send our kids to. At the very least, we wouldn't classify those places as the best. I think the kids from We Got This deserve the best. They're the ones who, despite their set of circumstances, want to positively impact their neighborhood. We used to talk about the parking lot kids when I worked at the alternative school. They were the kids that could pass classes and find success in life even if they just showed up to the parking lot of the school. It's not that the parking lot kids don't deserve the best, it's just that they would be fine even if they chose not to take full advantage of the best education available to them. The experience wouldn't be nearly as transformative for them. My own kids are that way. They read above grade level and test higher in mathematics than the majority of their peers. Already at 11 and 13 years old, they project the ability to gain access to college, find a career that they enjoy, and live independently. When I talk to kids growing up in poverty, some of them are that way, but many are not. The transformative power of a high-quality education is amplified when paired with someone that can use their education to disrupt cycles of poverty. That's why I think they should get the best. It's also why I think more of us should want them to get the best. Lately at We Got This, we've been talking about how growing up in a clean neighborhood is a privilege. It hit me one day when I was walking down the street with 8 to 18-year-olds picking up trash during our weekly cleanup. I never had to do this growing up. I had the privilege of growing up in a clean neighborhood. This group of people, my own kids now included, does not have that privilege. We have to try to make neighborhood cleanliness a thing. It makes me wonder who should have the best neighborhood. I have a very personal understanding around the added stress someone experiences living in my neighborhood. It's chaotic and unpredictable. Things happen you would rather didn't. Shitty things happen. When they aren't happening, you wonder when the next time they will. There is an underlying current of stress here. It's kind of like when you have a rock in your shoe or when you're on a long run and your sock is rubbing weird on your ankle. Sometimes it's annoying and sometimes it gives you a blister, but either way you know something's not right. Who should get the best? The cycle of poverty is a real thing. If you grow up in poverty, you are more likely to enter your adult life in poverty, which means you have to do more to get out of poverty. The disruption of cycles takes movement and action. I was 14 or 15 when my mom asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I told her I didn't know, so she took me to the library. This was before we had a computer, and she told me to do that thing when you call someone collect, but instead of saying your name when prompted, you quickly say, "Mom, I'm ready, come pick me up." She told me they had books that have all of the jobs listed in them, and I should pick one. About an hour after I walked into the library, I landed on engineer and walked over to the payphone. Then I went about my normal life, getting good grades, taking ACTs, and later filling out college applications. I got into whatever colleges I applied to and picked one. I did the FAFSA paperwork, got financed to go to college, and moved out a couple of days before I turned 18. I went to college, got good grades, and started the process toward becoming an engineer. All of those things required work on my part, but all of that work was relatively easy. When I think about that process of taking a young teenager and turning them into someone that can provide for themselves an income when they enter the real world, I had the best. The process that was easy for me isn't easy for everyone else. I think it should be easier for the kids in my neighborhood. I think that they should get the best, yet you could argue they get the worst. I started working on our next rental property, the White House on the corner. I'm projecting that I'll finish that building in 18 months. I don't work on them full time yet, so I stop over there a couple of half days during the week and maybe a full day or two on the weekends. If I had to guess, I'll spend somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 hours working inside and outside of the property. 1,000 hours in one place as you slowly fix and repair decades of decay and shoddy work brings one to the conclusion that these houses are not the best. Most of the buildings in my neighborhood are over 100 years old. 100-year-old houses have problems. But the biggest problem I find isn't a structural one or anything that has to do with the quality of craftsmanship of any of the upgrades done since it was built. It's more of an ethical problem. Why was this place deemed good enough for someone to pay $800 a month for the upper and $800 a month for the lower? As I pull down cabinets with bullet holes in them and turn off the gas to the water heater that has rusted away to the point it no longer holds water, I wonder why this was okay. The woman we bought the White House on the corner from posted on a website called Bigger Pockets about her intentions around buying investment properties. I like some of the stuff Bigger Pockets puts out, and I like the idea of saving, investing, and enjoying the income you get from your investments. Based on her post, so does she. We have that in common. You can access transaction histories for properties on the City of Milwaukee website. Doing so told me she purchased the house for $20,000. I couldn't tell you what work was done prior to the tenants moving in, but it looks like a toilet or two was replaced. Maybe some upper cabinets were installed in one of the kitchens. I think one of the bathroom vanities might be newer. I'm going to guess the investment was $2,000. The ceiling in the hallway of the lower, which is directly below the drain pipes from the kitchen upstairs, isn't there and looks like someone attempted and failed to make some kind of repair, which will get cut out and replaced with new drains in the coming months. Her $22,000 investment, in theory, should allow her to bring in 12 months of $800 rents for the upper and the lower. A total rent of $19,200 minus expenses, tax, insurance, water, and sewage, would net her about $15,000. $15,000 a year on a $22,000 investment, or a 68% rate of return, or 7 or 8 times what the stock market would give you on a good year. Financially, the math is awesome. I love compound interest. And if I had to guess, my third most frequented website is the compound interest calculator I use. A $22,000 investment returning 68% compounded 12 times a year with nothing added to the investment turns into $1 million in 6 years. Mathematically, it's brilliant. Ethically, it's insane. One person with access to $22,000 and a cursory understanding of compound interest gets the best, while anyone that rents for them gets the worst, in a place where most of us would never choose to live. It might be because I have no experience with the government, or I might be speaking out of ignorance. I wouldn't even know where to start with creating a policy or a law, but I also don't know if we need one. We could just stop doing this. We could all just decide that a single mom with a couple of kids that works at McDonald's deserves the best. Not because she did anything to deserve the best, not because she's a hard worker or a good mom, not even because her mother and grandmother and great-grandmother dealt with racism and oppression their entire lives, but she deserves a standard of living we would expect, because we wouldn't be okay with less. I think we do things until they become socially inappropriate, then we stop. We, the collective we, used to allow teachers to smoke in the teacher's lounge. Today, if a teacher lit up a cigarette inside the school building, they would be fired. We used to dump motor oil down the sewer. We stopped doing that because we know that's not a good thing to do. If someone saw you take a tub of drain oil and dump it in the sewer, you would expect some sort of consequence or intervention. We could do the same thing when it comes to real estate investments. We could stop trying to get outrageous rates of return by providing housing that 99% of people would actively never tolerate. Just because we do it this way now doesn't mean we have to keep doing it the same way. We could find that type of behavior reprehensible to the point where the majority of people stop doing it. Right now, it's cool to have a rental. It makes you seem a certain way. I used to look at people with rentals with envy, which is the same feeling I sense reciprocated when I tell people I've got a couple. But there is nothing envious about providing substandard housing to someone and profiting greatly. It should be seen for what it is: taking advantage of the poor, profiting from those that can afford to be profited from the least. The fear I can hear someone expressing when I suggest that the poorest of the poor receive the best is that it would be undeserved, that they'd be receiving some type of handout. I've never been in favor of handouts. I don't know that handouts produce great adults. What I am in favor of is raising the floor of what we have. What I am in favor of is raising the floor of what we, the collective we, deem acceptable. The buildings I have renovated in my neighborhood are at the same standard and quality that I would expect out of my own house. In some instances, they're better. There is a floor to what I am willing to offer someone and be compensated for. It's almost like there's a separate tier for what you should expect if you are poor and black. Your schools suck. People with means try to take advantage of you. You live in an overly traumatic place. Your starting point in life is significantly below that of your average white counterpart, and much of that was done to you because of what you or your grandparents look like. Maybe the people here should get the best. I kind of believe that. The bullshit they have to deal with on a regular basis because of the families they were born into and where they go to sleep at night requires way more effort to arrive at what was easily accessible to Meg or me. On the pathway to the best is the recognition that they shouldn't get the worst. That's where we're at now. Collectively, we still believe if you are poor and black, you should get the worst. Maybe we will never arrive at the point where if you are poor and black, you should get the best, but I've never seen a justification for why they should receive the worst. The recognition of that is the first step in moving towards something better. I cannot stress enough in this collection of episodes that I'm not going to tell you what to do. It would be easier to write a 5-point plan or create a handbook on changing neighborhoods, but I'm not interested in telling anyone what to do. What has worked on the corner of 8th and Ring where I live might not work somewhere else. However, I am very much interested in something different, providing you with context which might shape the way you think. I believe how you think informs how you act. Our innate desires to create something better are what drive us towards action in creating a more socially just world. As we move closer to a world where inequity and inequality are dictated less and less by the color of your skin, a raising of the floor for what is acceptable must occur. Instead of telling you what to do, I suggest looking for opportunities to raise the floor of acceptability for someone. Found within the unfolding story of the long arc of justice are hundreds or thousands of people raising the floor of social acceptability around what is made accessible for the poor. That is very different from a handout. A handout is consumed. Accessibility is a tool that can be multiplied. Stable housing has a multiplicative impact. Education has the ability to allow you to scale exponentially. If you provide access to someone, and I provide access to someone, one day we will look up, and my neighborhood will be a very different place.